Okay, we're going to look at the royal DNA of the pharaohs of the 17th and 18th dynasties. This goes well with the video I just put out a few days ago, actually talking about the lineage running in here from about the 8th king of the 18th dynasty through King Tut's time and so on. But also in that video I talked about before and after and things that goes on. In fact, I'll put it as the one in the top left hand corner when we're through with this one, so you can go back and look and put these things together. I don't want to repeat myself over and over, but I may have to do so. This dynasty is well known, and especially for King Tut and them finding all of his artifacts and things that go with that. And I'll go into something else that's been found out about that here in just a moment when we get into it. But also it's the time of Akenaten, for Akenaten was just before then, and his father and so on. And he brought about a new monotheistic worship that was about the sun. And there was art that was a little different at this time. You can look at something like this and say, well, that's a strange hat gear. Well, not even just for this dynasty. It goes before that and everything way back. It's not an upper or lower crown. It's a unified type and not red or white crown, the one with the bowling pin or the one that has the butterfly tongue in it. This is a blue crown. So there's three colors. But in the artwork, they can find a lot of things that are different in Akenaten, and strange shapes and strange forms. And another thing that they started to show was affection between pharaohs. And everybody's realized this Aten worship. And you can always see the signification of it where they come down with the rays of the sun. And perfect little slit-cut beams that he's got here. And even the one right in front of his face shows him taking an ankh, and it's got a hand on the end of each one. We'll get into that again a little bit later, but this was that heretic pharaoh. And then, of course, came Akhenaten, son, King Tut, that we all know about. And then it went to Ai, and so on down from there. Almost actually ended the 18th dynasty at that point, but we're going to look at genetics that have been found from this point and show how it can be shown, proven to kind of lead through it. Perfect with that sun there, by the way. This is from a recent vid that I've gotten from Egyptologist 7, formerly known as 7 Phoenician 7. There's a lot of great information. In fact, we seem to be, with some of the information we put out recently, being tagged back and forth. We could have put this together somewhat, and I'm kind of going to do it now, but not double it up. As again, I'll just put it in the top left-hand corner at the very end of it in the video that I did. It's just about this, but doesn't contain genetic information. It contains just about everything else, and I talked about genetics and parts they had learned at that point, but this is a full connective here. Because the people that were in that genetic study are the people whose names you see up here at the top of it. And people tried to jump on it fast, and they go, oh, that's just a bunch of white scientists trying to da-da-da and everything. And it's like, no, look at those names and try that one again. This is reality. We're gonna go with reality here, people. It's the only way to go. Let's continue. So this is a title of a new paper. It just came out. Insights from the ancient DNA analysis of Egyptian human mummies. Clues to disease and kinship. So they were looking at things, and of course we know about King Tut and having some afflictions and so on, and they wanted to look through all the whole family, see if they could find genetic anomalies and things that we're aware of now from genetic studies and other things, and be able to connect it as a family. It's kind of a neat thing to be able to look through and say, well, here's great-grandma, and here's all that, and in a way it makes connections. In fact, the royal male lineage was the Y chromosome haplogroup R1b. That was passed down from the grandparent, or further, Amenhotep III, to the father, KV55, Akenaten, to the grandchild, Tutankamun. These haplogroups run in a lineage, male and male, female, female. In fact, the maternal lineage, our mitochondrial haplogroup K, extended from the great-grandmother, Thuya, to the grandmother, KV35, known as the elderly lady, which has been shown to be Queen Tai, to the yet historically unidentified mother of KV25, which is the younger lady, to Tutankamun. Now they figured out that through all of that and working it out that this younger lady, they did the scans on her and ended up being the mother of King Tutankhamun no matter what. And everybody says, well, that's Nefertiti. It could be one of his other but being in it out works out the greatest through right there. Just makes sense. There is a slight asterisk and question mark next to that, but let's not harp on that exact little moment there, for Nefertiti has a few things that go unconnected with her, and she's worthy of her own video. We're looking at this whole lineage that runs through. From great-grandparents, they talked about Thuya and Yuya, and I showed you the thing where they're blonde-haired people done about the best that they've been done at all of them. They even talk about their buck teeth slightly, and it runs through, and dental patterns, the whole 9 yards. So it's showing R1b from the male and a K female lineage, mitochondrial and paternal, passing through. So looking at the studies here, it appears that off looking at all the possibilities that R1b has got a 100% ratio on this full lineage of many more than just the one or two that we were starting to talk about here. And how does that work out? And note again how they have the King Tut data and everything else that goes along with that is the fact that they are the people that did that actual case study. We'll talk about that here in just a minute too, whenever their thing shows up. But they have this other going on. So here's something that came out from IGEA, and it says, are you a direct male descendant of the pharaohs? IGEA exclusively publishes the wide DNA profile of Tutankhamun and starts the search for his last living relatives. Now that's a strange statement there, because the truth of what comes out is far from, oh, well, you're the last sole survivor. In the year 2009, extended DNA tests had been carried out under Zahi Hawass with the mummy of Tutankhamun and other members of his family. These are only partially been published in February 2010. Despite several demands, the results of the Y-DNA tests had been shut down. So they didn't want to tell you the male line. They only told us the female. IGEA was able to reconstruct the Y-DNA profile of Tutankhamun and his father Akenaten and his grandfather Amenhotep with the help of recording the Discovery Channel. The astonishing result. Well, they were asking, are you a direct male descendant of the pharaohs? Because Tutankhamun belongs to the Haplogroup R-M269, which is a certain section and subclass of R. You know, there's R1, R1A, R1B. We'll get into that a little bit, but not heavily, don't worry. But more than 50% of all men in Western Europe belong to this same haplogroup. RM269 was previously classified as R1B1A2, and then from 2003 to 2005, but then R1B1C from 2005 to 2008, and then reclassified to R1B1B2 to 2008 and 11. It's weird there, but you would think, okay, well, R1B1A2, well, if it's A2, it's got to be B. You've got C listed here, but then you've got 1B, B2. Well, isn't B2 C? Yeah, it all kind of works weird, but what we're looking at is people that are R1, and what R actually comes from can be looked genetically too, so look that up. It's quite interesting, and all the people that are connected with all that from ancient times and through Cro-Magnon, which is, I'm sorry, now it's been called early European modern humans. But R1 and R1A, R1B, and then the subsets of that where this is this and this is this, but we see this over here a little different and this over here a little different, but it's variations on a theme of this same song. Now, R-M269 arose about 10,000 years ago, approximately, the end of the last ice age, and was part of the Neolithic Revolution. What are they talking about? That's when everything started getting a whole lot more fancy from just simple hunter-gatherers, it seems. And let's mention that that 10,000 year date, whenever I was young, was about 3,500, 45. Oh no, well, maybe 50. Well, maybe, oh, whoopsie. Oh, look, Cattle Hoyak, and oh my gosh, Göbekli Tepe. And now they're like, but that's not what this video is about. Today, RM269 is represented by 2.9% of the current Egyptian population, 1% Algerian, 7.3% in Lebanon still, 81% in Spain, and 92% in Wales. Yeah, it's in London, England, Wales, you know, got the dragon symbology and everything. Oh, knock, knock, goes along with it. It says 2.9 in Egypt, but I'll get closer a little bit later. So this is just what they call it now, just this variant, M269. The migration of R1B people can be followed archaeologically through the presence of domesticated cattle, which appear in the central Syrian area around 8,000, 7,500 BC, like Cattle and all these people we talk about. Then in the southern Levant and Egypt around 7,500 BC, second wave of a Natufian type people that are coming back through in a back migration that come all the way through into Egypt around 7,600 BC and Nabta Playa and Bir el Saiba. That leads on to these people that ended up being known as the Nakata cultures and so on, that are the pre-dynastic Egyptians that come together. Okay? Just so we can get kind of a wide brace of like, well, did they show up real late? No. This is the Egyptians. Now here's a strange thing. Look at the scaling that goes on here. And what you notice by looking at it, that there's some good blurbs down there in Egypt where we know about here. And up in here in the Middle East, they're still in a good strong pocket here above the Black Sea, and of course the Caucasus Mountain area and so on, and leading up and over into the top part of India. But where is it the strongest at? Well, it's actually just out of frame here in the shot, for it's all of Western Europe. It's where you see that at. Now that's a current consensus of the people and where they're living today versus what really was going on in ancient times, or you might see a little bit darker blob right down there. And in the Middle East, notice that Italy has got a dark band coming off the top of it and leading over through France, from the Etruscan area and stuff. In fact, it's kind of shaped like a horse there, but also in a large portion of Spain. And then really the British Isles are pretty much blotched in solid, including Ireland and so on. So that's where currently the people live that have the same genetics that have been shown to have been from King Tut and actually his whole family lineage leading back. The Haplogroup K has its origins in the Middle Upper Paleolithic, likely Western Asian area, which we think of Asia when we were talking about Anatolia. That's Asia Minor, so it's just right over there in that blurb in the middle over there. K is found in Central, Southern, and Northern Europe too. North Africa, the Horn of Africa, South, and West Asia. And so there's a blanket of an area that also was a blanket where ancient Caucasians were at. at one time and certain people that demographics have changed, let's just say, tactfully and continue on. K is found in 6% of native Europeans in the Levant, 16% of the Druze in Syria and Lebanon, Israel and Jordan belonging to the Haplogroup K. It reaches 8% of Palestinians as well as 17% in Kurdistan, way over there. But also, whenever you look around and you try to find blue-eyed people and so on, it definitely connects to those type of genetics, singling it out still to this day where it lasts big enough to be showing up in a haplogroup selection in a good amount. That's just K, the mitochondrial. K has been discovered in the PPNB, pre-pottery, site of Tel Ramad, Syria at 6000 BC, and early farmers of the Central European area at 5500. In fact, early European farmers are associated with this on their mitochondrial side. Specimens in Greece dated to 7605 BC belonging to K1C. They were able to pick it out and tag it pretty well. Let me just say 7600. In Greece, the same genetics, the same people. In fact, Otzi, the famous frozen Iceman, I've even done a separate video about. In fact, he's been in 3 or 4 because he has tattoos on his shoulder. We talked about tattoos there, tattoos over here in this Central Asian type area, and old Proto-Europeans, and tattoos actually on, wow, on Ginger, the pre-dynastic Ghibelline natural mummy before they even started mummification, and that's kind of the same symbols used in the same way. In fact, there's a lot of tattooing in Egypt, and there's a lot of tattooing all over the place. But Otzi, the frozen Iceman, belongs to the K1 portion of the K haplogroup at 3300 BC up in the Alps. And we look at that time and you go, oh, so at the same time, all these people were going on quite to some extent that had the same haplogroup. K has been observed among the mummies at Abu Sir el-Melik in Egypt. Now that's from that recent study of the ancient necropolis, where they're able to actually, in the new methods, figure out that they could get good substantial DNA detectable out of them, like 93 different mummies, and they were looking at a series of time there. What they were expecting to see is it being one way and then changing because the Persians came in, and then oops, here come the Greeks, and then here comes the Romans. Amazingly, a few things were shown in that study. They said, no, it pretty much stays static all the way through. In fact, a lot of those haplogroups are already extant in all these other areas too, but the current population with this ancient study shows only a 1% connection, not even 2.9. That's probably because of R1b being separated here in the thoughts, because it didn't show up in the test, I don't think, of those 93. Of course, those were commoners and not the nobility. And that says something different, doesn't it? Because it's all passed from father to son to father to son, but you have more than one kid. I mean, Ramses is said to have over 100 kids. Imagine just a couple of generations down the road. And so whenever dynasties break apart and they go to the next dynasty, because it doesn't have a superlative straight connection, it still has connections, because grandpa's brother was da-da-da, da-da-da, and he married her, and hell, she's part of the thing anyhow, and da-da-da, and so on. Yeah. Kind of like the Sumerian look at it, too, on how you would get a numberage of who you were supposedly godly related to in some way, and these god kings. And so, where does K show up at? Well, K can be shown up a little bit in North Africa, that's over here in the Berber areas that are up here, but still strong and more in the Delta area, and that would make more sense with what you think of in current days. But all across the Holy Land, and up through Lebanon, and whoa, big strongness in here in Georgia and the Caucasus area and the Colchians. Herodotus talked about, but also strong in Anatolia and the Greek area somewhat, leading all the way up through Proto-European lands, but not so much up in here where you could have seen it a long time ago for sure. And then Denmark and places through Italy, places through Spain, all of Western Europe, and seemingly strong again in this one spot of Western Europe and the British Isles. That would only seem conspicuous if you had an odd view on the way history actually went, probably. But if you could put that together and see that, it kind of makes sense. It does kind of fade out, but oh, it's over there in India too, and so on, modern day even. So here's the Amarna haplogroup lineage. And so what we're talking about is going all the way from the times of Thuya and Yuya, and whenever you watch my video that's at the very end of this in the top left, it'll show Thuya and Yuya and their blonde people and so on, and how this leads down through Amenhotep and so on, and Amenhotep 3 and 4, which is Akenaten, and Nefertiti, and lead down through the Tutankamun, and even their fetuses, perhaps, if you will. There were unborn kings, but how does he get past this point? Well, all these other people had kids that were not the king, and the king had this son, but look, he had more, and those would have had it, and he had kids, and he told two friends, and they told two friends, and multiply that one after a couple of generations. So what we're looking at is how many of K do we have here, and how many R were showing up. And there are versions where, well, there's a couple of them we're kind of unsure of, but I had connected through, and so would he have too? Well, she's K, he comes from that leads, that would be, well, it's just not one that's confirmed yet on these people, but I mean, just look at it and you go, well, he's in between the numbers that have to be his, unless, oh, we're unsure if Thuya is really his mom, but it looks like he is. Horemheb, and this other one here, not quite sure. Everybody else through the whole Amarna period, as they call it, yeah, pretty much they've got that. There's that Y-DNA-R and mtDNA-K. But it goes before that, because see, that guy even had a granddad. Way up there at the top thing, he had a granddad. And so now we can look through the dynasty of that to where even at the top where Thuya and Yuya are, and those R's that we were looking at here, and you could bet she's probably got that same haplogroup here as a female, and his wife and Iset and so on. But sure enough, verified, all these are leading down through R, 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 R. Pretty simplistic view of it here. Now they talk about possible childs of one, but a disconnect, this, that, and the other, possibly married daughter, married, so on like that. But look at through, and it falls down through. Well, regardless of this, and oh, there's Hatshepsut, regardless of this effect, and see how it loses out there, but it comes in from this line. And who does that come from? That comes from that line, which still has that line, which still has that line. Regardless of that effect, when you end up here at the bottom of it, this is a lineage, and he married, and his kids, and Thuya and Yuya, and here we go. With great, 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 great grandpa of King Tut. Right? So just to make it kind of 101 version of that, but it's not. You could stop this and kind of zoom in and check it out a little bit more and get a little more read up on it. And this is what I was talking about in the last video, which will be at the end in the top left hand corner, where I said, well, you can go before this and pick out groups and then groups and goes through, and then you can pick out just statuary of them and show pictures like that. And I never really did that, where she's doing that here, not necessarily pictographs or the mummies themselves, which is what I showed you of Thuya and Yuya coming down through and that small part. But now if we take a look at something like this, and again we're right at the very bottom looking at Thuya and Yuya here and their connectives through this. Now we're going back through 18th dynasty that I was doing mine about. It started at the 8th king, going all the way back till it ends and coming into the 17th dynasty, and therefore due to a passing lineage and records saying that this was the son of so-and-so, and it works out to where R runs through all of these. Right? Now, well, that picture has to get in the way. It runs through in a nice diagonal type point line there, and it'll depend how you line them up and so on like that. But also what we can tell here is that they are passed on lineage, father to son, father to son, father to son, father to son. These other ones that are shown here that are not necessarily showing with the R, that's his brother. Would make common sense that you pretty much got to have it. Did he have a different wife? And would that even possibly had a different haplogroup associated with it? We don't know all of this at that point. No, we don't know all of this at that point. But you can go down through here and see that all these people had brothers and different ones that must have had kids that aren't the ones that we're even looking at that are connected up to it. And so how thick was it? Well, it looks like it was pretty hellishly thick as far as the nobility went from way back when. So a lot of people try to make connectives to the Wayback Machine, and if we were to take and find some nobility mummies from way back, you'd probably see it active. And in doing so, it might show us a full connection all the way through, or how it actually went. But some people don't want to have that type of access, and they sure don't want things like that. In fact, Hawass himself tried to ban this from coming out once he found out, after he'd already said he was going to say it. Anyhow, so blood group testing. And this is something that they did before they had full genetic testing and being able to tell you things DNA-wise. At least they could tell you from their blood, if they could get any, how that connects. And so blood groups amongst the Amarna rulers, God, why does it keep doing that, were similar, but this could not resolve their connections between KV55 male and someone before that. And if it would get that out of my way, yeah, this could not resolve their exact relationships. Tutankamun and the KV55 male, they both had blood group A2 and MN. Thus, they could be brothers, or if their mother shares the same groups, father and son. The solution, father and son, is supported by genetics, and Hawass came out in 2010 and said that. So it was part of the study that was come out before that, but they didn't want to go with the famous King Tut. But of course, if you just took the other lineage and you go, well, this was their parents, pretty evident. So this is data going back from 1966 and 76 also, on blood testing back whenever they did that. Now they had hair identification done on a lot of different mummies through. There are people that, like Joanne Fletcher, her dissertation was done on one and stuff. So, but in the tomb of Tutankamun, Howard Carter found a set of miniature coffins with the inscription of Queen Tai. Right? It's found, you can still see it in the Museum of Cairo exhibit. They contained a single ringlet of hair. So a cut off ringlet, long lock of hair. This was incorporated into Tutankhamun's burial as a souvenir from his ancestor, Queen Tai. Now they'd come up and figured this out, and another guy came up and said in 2000 about this. But what was noticed whenever they built the new place, the new museum that they have going on, if you've seen it or heard about it, they went through all of Tutankhamun's stuff, and they were going to try to put on exhibit about 75% of it at one time, and over a period of years they would have putting everything out possibly that they really had of his that was worth seeing, and could rotate portions of it with the main part that you want to see, of course, always evident, right? And this lock of hair was then also used and compared with the wavy hair of the elderly lady in KV-35, leading to a proposed identification as Tai. So this is also making a connection whenever they had these two mummies that apparently, whenever they got ransacked, had been stowed away someplace else, but they were extremely well done, and there was these trinkets with them. And then King Tut, whenever they found this, they were like, here's that connective right here. This is the boy king, and so on. And you know, in one way, boy king, da da da, and you lament for him dying so early, but he didn't do things that were like Ramses and some of these other guys that were really, you know, the great. The reason he's just so enamored, in fact, is we lament the fact that he died so early and the things and the way that it went through. But instead of just being, oh, the king that only lasted for a certain amount of time because we found all of his stuff and all that's connected to it, all of a sudden it's the boy king. And he deserves that, because you've got to put the incredible hierarchy that is all of Egypt on the shoulders of something, because a lot of it has been ransacked in ancient days, and when they found something that was worthy enough that has brought about the modern Egyptology and everything that we love about it today, it has to hold those shoulders. And it does by in itself. I did a video more recently about it, and it showed all these Shabti dolls. Some of them are blue-eyed little Shabti dolls, but also how all of these other things inside of his burial do not seem to connect to King Tut. In fact, his burial chamber itself kind of turns the wrong way for the time period, and the way that they do it. And it's just like, what, you know, what could this all mean? Well, it could mean a lot of different things, and I could go into it. I did in my separate little videos there. But what it also looks like is that a lot of his treasures were pretty much all the stuff from all these ancient dynasties thrown in there. That maybe they didn't have that much they put in each one of them, but then whenever they did this stash inside of King Tut's and then buried it with the overlay of the others that they never truly found, because it was kind of tucked in over here and had all the washover done on it, after a few generations, and of course damnatio memoriae, wanting to not remember this whole fact and everything, and how the religion had gone a little wonky, they dropped it totally off. Oh, in Daily News here, even it's been said twice in here now, but apparently he said it again because someone asked him in February 19th of this year, 2020, that no, Tutankamun was not black, says Ayahuasca. He says Tutankamun was not black, and the portrayal of ancient Egyptian civilization as black has no element of truth to it, Hawass told some reporters. But what he didn't really want to show is what the truth of it was and how it actually works out. So you watch that video that I go here at the very end of it, and you're going to see all these blonde-haired, blue-eyed people that are all connected to it, and you're like, what? Well, if you look closely, you can do that to many, many ancient civilizations. I've kind of put it out there and showed you if you watched a lot of my other videos. I'll go back through them, see if one of them catches your attention. You'll be like, what? The French and Egyptians knew they were recreating King Tut in the recreation off the CAT scan that they done, but the Americans were not even told where the skull came from. They didn't even know. Could have been an Eskimo, this, that, and the other, but they correctly identified it as a Caucasian North African endemic. The council said in a statement the results of the three teams were identical, very similar in basic shape. Yeah, so 3 different teams did a recreation of it, and they're like, yeah, that's pretty much, that doesn't look too far off. Possibly recognizable, like they use in modern forensics to say to a family, and goes, this, you know, it's sad to say, they go, does this look like your son? And they go, yeah, it's them. So you look at this blonde-haired type mummies that are here and stuff, and you wonder, well, what's that? You know, well, there's this little slight buck teeth, and there's King Tut, and we're looking at all this full lineage that goes on through this. So whenever you see a portrait of the ancient boy king and it looks like this, and everybody goes, oh, well, see, he looks Middle Eastern, he looks this, that, and the other. You know what's strange about this version? If you say he looks, a lot of times they've made this strange connection. They say, see how his ears are big lobe pierced? That's a woman thing really now during this time. Men don't really do that so much. In fact, his actual gold headgear that everybody marvels over, yeah, the big thing, woo, they realized a long time ago somebody else's used to have that, and they had pierced ears too. So it's probably his mom leading into it, because she was the pharaoh before he became the pharaoh, and they took the face out of that, redid his type of face, and then welded it into there. Incredible workmanship whenever they got to look through the little thing where they were talking about that too in a video. Tried to do a video about it, it got marked. I tried to cut it up in pieces, and no, they weren't going to do it. So I'll give you a thing here. You're looking at this boy king over here on the right, and it's supposed to be with him, and it's his stuff, and it's the boy king and all that, right? It's, you know, how about that's Queen Ty right there with that downturned mouth? No, just put a wig on her. Hopefully you can see what I'm saying. In King Tut's stash, that's old. This must be the boy king. That's not at all. That's his mom whenever his mom was younger. A portrait of her that's in his stuff. Oh, well, this and this and this is from there, and so is that. What about this? Yeah, like Akenaten statue and so on like that. Yeah. What's this thing about red ochre? Well, man, I'm Irish, and I get almost as dark as that anyhow. I'm really closer to the little lightness of his nose there right now, but not in summer, and I didn't get out in the sun real good. But man, when I used to play golf, regardless of that fact, they depict people, they only had a few separate colors that they did. Red ochre males and usually pale females. They would only show females in darker images and stuff whenever they were active and doing things, and quite often royalty would be shown in this way whenever they're doing things, because they were doing things for the people. But that same red ochre males and pale females is found in Minoan art and Etruscan art and the Mitanni people and the Colchians we talked about a little bit ago. The genetics is showing, yep, just like Herodotus said, that's, yeah, people of Georgia today have a connective to it in ancient times. But then, wow, way over here in Western Europe, that's amazing. And oh man, the British Isles, that's freaking amazing. But ancient Greek art had the same depictions. And people want to not make the connectives there too. Or maybe a lot of times they're not aware. Picture that with a wig on. It's possible. It's just a thought I want to put out there. So here we see a depiction of King Tut. This on the side of one of the boxes that he has there and so on. And right now he's in a chariot and he's trampling over troglodyte Nubians here and getting fanned by some of them in the background, one of which has got to be Mahaperi, because he's listed as fan bearer to the king. So this is the situation going on in this parade pony thing that's going on. So we were talking about what's been found with them, and they found a couple of chariots with them. What's odd is they say, well, there's another chariot in there, and this isn't the one that he's depicted in. This is another one, and there's this one that's more of like a ceremonial thing, and that must have been maybe even from Akenaten, or maybe it could have come from somewhat before that. But it couldn't come from too many dynasties, because they started getting the horse chariot idea after the time of what we call the Hyksos. But now we've realized, and I got a video about it, that the Hyksos actually had been there for a whole long time. It wasn't some whip that came in. What was the whip that came in? Got a video about it too. So I've got this chariot and everything too. It's being put out there, and he's, again, check it out, he's pulling the sun disk. So now we have this chariot with a horse pulling a sun disk. I see that in a lot of places in ancient times. I bet you do too. He's also wearing that blue crown right now. He's not wearing the thing. And there's a whole video I did about Egyptian blue and so on. So we're looking at here connectives and how they run through this male and female version of it, and how it runs through this ancient time and the connectives of these dynasties. And yeah, only in this video here making connection of 17th to 18th dynasties here, but you can look at it as being a lineage that passed much before, just like the scribes talked about how they went from father to son, father to son, father to son. And if it ever broke apart in any way and somebody did not have a son as a child, it actually went to your uncle and so on else. Biblical things talk about things like this, and it's weird. It talks about how women, this, that, and the other, but actually the reality of how it goes. A lot of people embraced forms of this, if you will, in ancient times. This temple that we're looking at right here forms and points and geographic north and towards the setting of the sun during solstices and all kinds of things that are hooked up that a lot of people would even not be aware of if it wasn't for some people getting in there and checking it out. Huge, giant expanse. I believe we're looking at Dendera here, and if you can't tell how tall they are, maybe you can see the ant-looking things that are walking. There's one right before going into the temple columns, one right in the middle of it there, and it's really quite huge. And when you come into it, it's just a columnated hall. That saved a lot of its art. But so this was done again from Egyptologist 7, formerly known as 7 Phoenician 7. I thought I'd vamp over the top of this because it just really dovetails with the one that I just did, which is coming up in your top left-hand corner. To take a look at that. Leave some comments and let me know what y'all think. But is this surprising to anybody? Let me know. Peace.